William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I welcome you to another Two Hats special of community events. Let's look in and see what's really happening.
Welcome to First Sunday at Sons. This is a Deep Ellum Community Association initiative. I am Breonny Lee. I don't know how I got roped into this job, but I did. I'm active in the music scene, the Dallas music scene. I am the lead entertainment coordinator for the Deep Ellum Arts Festival. I volunteer for KNON on Tuesday mornings. We've just been nominated for Best Radio Show of the Year for Dallas Observer, so please go cast your votes. And for full disclosure, I wasn't invited here simply because I'm active in the music scene, but I sit on the board for the Deep Ellum Community Association. So our panelists, I'll let them introduce themselves in order. First we have Chris Mueller, otherwise known as the Ghost of Blind Lemon, and I'll let him tell you a little bit about what he does.
Well, as she said, I am the Ghost of Blind Lemon. I have a local music blog, appropriately enough, called Ghost of Blind Lemon that covers Dallas local music and music from the Texas area. I also book shows, including, if I may do a little plug of my own show, the second annual Ghosty Awards. It's going to be November 20th at what's the name of that club? Is it help me out here.
Actually, there was a scheduling conflict. We're going to have to...
Oh! Goodbye. That does it. I'm gone. No, it's going to be at Three Links. We're going to have Deaf Disco artist 88 Killer. We're going to have the High Moons, the first ever Ghosty all-star band, bunch of acoustic performances. But basically, I just try to promote good music anywhere I see it, try to book shows, whatever I can do that I can in the music community. Your turn.
All right, next we have Scott Beggs, who's the owner of Three Links just up the street at, what's the address on Elm?
2704 Elm.
Excellent. I'll let Scott tell you a little bit about what he does here. He's been booking music in Deep Ellum maybe longer than anyone I know.
Doug Simmons got me beat right now. So I own Three Links, do the booking and oversee the venue and the operations, and book occasional shows at Trees and Bomb Factory for the Elm Street Tattoo Festival. Two-time fantasy football champion. 2 different leagues same year, or in 1 year. It's pretty awesome. And I live in the neighborhood. I live at Walton and Commerce. I've been there for 14 years and been hanging out in Deep Ellum since '86. Booked Trees and Gypsy Tea Room during the '90s and 2000s. So, yeah, it's fun. It's a good gig.
It's fun. And if you haven't been to Three Links, you're missing out. And there is an award ceremony next Sunday.
No, 2 Sundays.
2 Sundays.
November 20th.
Two Sundays from today. All right, and then over here we have Pete Freedman, who is the former music editor of the Dallas Observer and is now the co-founder and editor, general boss man of Central Track.
Yeah, you said it. I for my Deep Ellum cred, I did live down here for 3 years, and I'm here most nights of the week. But yeah, we cover Dallas culture at large with a big music focus, and if I may do a plug, we have an election night watch party at Club Dada on Tuesday. It's free, and we've got local rapper Buffalo Black, DJ Ursa Minor, and probably some piñatas.
All right.
So come on out. It's to project your violence specifically in a fun way.
Cartoon violence.
Yes. What's your website? CentralTrack.com. She already said it, but I'll say it again. CentralTrack.com. You can find us through a number of channels.
All right. Since we're getting started a little late, we'll just skip the small talk questions and go straight into the heavy stuff. I would like to hear your thoughts and feelings on the future of the Deep Ellum music scene, considering the recent and rapidly changing topography of Deep Ellum with the arrival of an influx of new restaurants, but not necessarily nightclubs and bars, music venues. Rather, just in general, what are your thoughts on the changes that are happening and what that means for us, for the music scene?
Who wants first?
Well, I guess I'll take it. I think that the music scene is stronger than it's been in a long time. I think that we had the little downturn in business down here where the neighborhood kind of took a nap. We lost a lot of venues at that point that were building the homegrown talent. You had most of the shows, the national shows, things like that, going to corporate venues, House of Blues and things like that. And so now that there is a solid group of venues building local acts, I think that's just going to, with the School of Rock and Sounds and everything, we have new kids coming up. I think the neighborhood's doing great as far as that goes, and I think that, we needed more than bars and tattoo parlors and pizza shops in Deep Ellum. So, I can eat a different meal every night on my way to the club and see good music and, eat at a different restaurant every night, and it's good quality food. And we're not selling to everybody that's coming down here now, but that's fine. I think they'll find their way to us eventually. We'll probably steal more people from them than they will from us. So,
So I think a healthy neighborhood requires a variety of businesses. And if Deep Ellum were just music venues, that excuse me, that might be cause for some concern. But I think that having the restaurants and the retail is a good thing. I'm more concerned about things like the 18-story mixed-use building going in across from Murray Street at Hall in Maine. And then also the proposed hotel that's going to go in across from Profit Bar in that empty lot. I think, things I will agree are quite strong at the moment, but I think when all that development happens and essentially doubles the, local population of people who live in Deep Ellum, I think it's, it's fair to be worried that that's going to cause rents to go up. And I also think change the landscape some, and I am a little worried about what Deep Ellum might look like in 5 years. That said, I'm thrilled about the way things are at the moment. I think they're very strong. I think, just the amount of attendance at shows, I think is as good as it's been in a while in Deep Ellum and in other parts of the city as well. But a great example of that is, Tuesday nights at Three Links, they're killing it. It's a free show with Friday's Foolery and Collab every week, and it's a Tuesday night. Once upon a time, that was a pretty dead night around here. And, rarely a week goes by where there's not like 100+ people in there. So if that can be sustained, that's certainly a nice, mark of health.
Well, I sort of feel a little of the odd man out here in this because although I do feel that things have been getting better in the neighborhood, the one question I've kind of been going through here is I do see a lot of great music venues here, but I've noticed that if you look at half of what's going on here, it feels like there's a stronger emphasis on the touring acts rather than the actual local artists. I've almost felt to a certain extent, you've probably heard the phrase jobless recovery. I feel like what's going on in Deep Ellum is something of a local musicianless recovery. I'm not saying that there aren't some great venues that aren't doing great things for local musicians, such as Three Links, but I don't know. It feels like, and this may be more about where music is right now, but I remember back when bands like Old 97s in their infancy were right off the bat getting their CD release show at Trees.
But the 90s and current day are
they are different.
Totally different. The age demographic of, the 90s were a great time for us. We grew up in an amazing time that, you look back at those shows and we were all kids. Everybody was kids at the show. And now I've seen kids that have been coming to the shows for 22 years since I've been down here, and now they're in their 30s and 40s, and that's the way that live music is today. And I think that I think too, there's a ton of local acts that are doing well, especially in the smaller venues. I mean, the bigger venues are obviously it's going to require a national act that can sell. There aren't a lot of locals right now that sell 500 or 600 tickets, but I think there's a lot more competition for the buck out there that, they're just, people will see them at certain rooms, but you have people like Leon Bridges that are blowing up and.
Well, Leon can do way bigger than Trees. Leon
Absolutely,
can do
yeah,
that's on
fair
me.
part.
Yeah.
But were you going to add? Because I've got.
No, and I'll be honest. I think that some of the other developments that are going on here are in some ways good, in the sense that when I started coming to the Deep Ellum in the mid-'90s, it really was a wide variety of types of people who came down here. It was not just the music lovers. I think that having the restaurants actually is a good thing, but I would like to see more places here that are focusing on the smaller local artists here. I know that Armory right now is starting to do some good shows. King Camel, of course I mentioned Three Links, and you've still got The Door putting on some shows here that are local. It just doesn't feel like as much of what's going on here is centered around the local artists, even when you're seeing places like Curtain Club now start to turn their back on as many of the on the local artists and favoring more the touring acts now. I don't know. That just seems to be a shift that I'm seeing
There's
right
a new
now.
buyer at Curtain Club, so that's why.
Well, I've got a lot of responses to that, Chris. For one, I think the idea that Deep Elm was just a local music haven in the 90s and it wasn't accepting touring acts is a false one. I didn't live here, but I've seen the back issues of The Observer and seen the ads. There are just as many touring bands as there are now. As opposed to, 5 years ago, there's way more venues for local bands to play than there were. So, it's not just Armory. You look at, places like Drugstore Cowboy for sure, RBC. You mentioned Liquid Lounge and Curtain Club are doing a little bit more. But, just all sorts of spots are doing more. I think it's a really great time. But then the other 2 points is, one, music, just like anything else, is a business. And if you want to open up a business and just have local bands that can't sell out your room, by all means, go for it. You're going to be out of business in a month and a half. The final point being, is, as much as, and I have a pretty strong record of supporting local music, just because you're a musician and you're local, you are not owed a thing. You have to promote, you have to get people out to your shows, you have to, learn the art of the trade, and, just being a local musician doesn't mean you get to get on stage anywhere. And I will also say that there have been a number of artists that have had their local album release show at Trees, like Bobby Sessions released his album at Trees and did really well at that. I know Topics had some big shows there. Ishii has had huge shows at Trees. Local bands of certain stature are 100% filling up a room the size of Trees and smaller. Certainly Three Links has, on Saturday nights, will have an all local bill that has it close to cap. So, I think it's just a matter of, I think it's really easy to get defensive and be like, local music doesn't get the shine it deserves. But, if you feel like the local music scene isn't getting the shine it deserves now, where the hell were you 5 years ago?
Oh, certainly, and 5 to even 10 years ago, where practically there was nothing here in Deep Ellum. The crime problem was non-existent, but I couldn't really say the reason it was non-existent then is you have to have people in order to have crime.
There's crime right now. There's absolutely crime right now.
Hiding out. So certainly, look, I'm not here to say that it's not in a better place than 5 to 10 years ago. I guess I'm feeling like maybe it's the fact that there aren't many smaller venues in Deep Ellum.
Can't get much smaller than Armory. It's like 30 people out there.
On that one.
There's Wits and Reno's and Curtain that still does a lot of shows over there. They're still doing a ton of local shows. Trees is doing local shows. We do Profit.
Don't discount the value of the the Bomb Factory.
Yeah.
Putting 4,000 people in Deep Ellum on a given night, when they have a sold-out show, those people go right over to Elm Street and Main Street and spend money in those establishments. Earlier this week, there were lines all along Elm Street, and a lot of it had to do with people going, not being familiar with Deep Ellum, coming down for that show, and then spreading, their hard-earned cash, across all of us. A rising tide lifts all ships. So, I think things are, to act like things are in a state of disarray is pretty disingenuous.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as say state of disarray, but still a place where they are still in need of more improvement than I think. And I will say that from many of the musicians that I've heard from, there's a lot of sentiment that echoes what I'm stating here.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, my reply, and it's harsh, and I'm sorry, but maybe those bands aren't good enough. Like that's a great thing. That's a great fucking problem for a scene to have, right? It's a bad look for your scene if you start a band and you get a show wherever the fuck you want. That is an unhealthy scene.
I mean, for example, we had down in San Antonio in October, there was this punk festival going on, and they did Battle of the Bands in San Antonio, Dallas, and I believe Austin. They didn't do either Austin or Houston. I don't think they could get a venue for Houston, and Houston has some great punk bands. But both of the two locals from Dallas were the two that made the festival. There were two bands picked, and it was two from Parts Unknown and American Shitstorm were the two that got on the bill. So, and the promoter from San Antonio was sitting there just like, he watched 5 bands, and he's like, all 5 of these bands are better than anything San Antonio will put on stage. He said, I promise you no local will get on my festival now, So yeah, I just think if you lived in San Antonio, man, I mean, that's gotta be rough. You live in San Antonio and you don't get to play the local festival.
I've moved here in 2003, and the only problem that I have as a musician is that there's not a bunch of me, because it's mostly making money on Saturday and Sunday night. Other than that, 10 years ago, if I wanted to know I was going to get paid in Dallas, I had to play covers. And so right now, the fact that there's places for original bands to make money on every single night in Dallas, you'd have to go, so other than a couple of other cities, even Nashville, and Nashville was not that.
Nashville's tough.
There's a lot of places to play that you might not get paid. In general, if you're a good band, and you can play in a place like the Twilight Lounge,
Or
you get paid.
like Freedman.
That did not exist,
Yeah.
years ago. So that's my own perspective. I mean, I wish there were more Saturday and Sunday nights, but
I mean, maybe like, I don't know what kind of artist we're talking about, but like maybe like a coffee shop artist or something? Is that, they're not...
No, it's
getting
not
gigs?
just the coffee shop artists, even though they especially have a hard time finding it in Deep Ellum, but I'm not sure that Deep Ellum at this stage is the right environment for them anymore.
I just can't sell enough booze if I have an acoustic guitar on the stage. I mean, that's it's the truth. You
Yeah.
can't. I mean, and I'll still book Jonathan Richmond, even though I know that we're not going to do a huge bar. There's still plenty of acoustic acts that I'll do, but I go into it knowing that, if I get a show like that on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, I'm generally going to make them play early so I can do a rock show later and sell booze. I mean, that really is what it comes down to on those artists.
No, I'm trying to come up with some off the top of my head, the name, let's see, Poppy Zander is a great artist who I don't think is...
She gets gigs.
And look, it's not that the artists are not getting gigs. I think sometimes, but if you look at the proportionality of local to non-local, and maybe it's just my imagination here, it feels like it's higher towards non-local than it's been in...
Well, it depends on the time of year. I mean, Texas is going to get overrun with touring acts in
Spring and
March
fall.
and October.
Well,
I mean,
March-
those are the two months that you're guaranteed that most nights of the week, Margin Walker or Parade of Flesh or King Camel. I mean, there's plenty of, every promoter in town is having to book national shows. But then you get into the summer and then the winter and stuff like that, and that's where we really do learn that that's how we keep our doors open, is by, those guys coming in on the off months and putting people in the room, we've got Dead Flowers. I mean, those guys have sold out every single time they played Three Links, and official sellouts.
Another big thing, you can't have it both ways, because a big argument I used to hear 5, 6, 7 years ago was, no touring bands come to town, right? Why are touring bands skipping over us? So now they're coming to town? That's a good problem. But I'll also say, I think another great example of how things have changed is, when I was, did I just lose this? No, I might have lost it. No, okay. When I was at the Observer 4 or 5 years ago, we were always kind of looking for things to cover. It was always like, how are we going to fill these pages? At Central Track, the biggest issue, and it has nothing to do with Central Track, it has to do with the state of the scene, is we're always feeling bad because we don't have the manpower or the time to cover everything we want. There's more going on than we can cover. And again, I think that's ultimately a good problem.
Just real quick, if you don't mind, like, I have no disrespect or anything to you, but I think there's kind of the distance between how you feel the scene is and how it really is. Because right now, local support is stronger than I've ever seen it. I mean, you got somebody like Topic, a well-known artist, who a whole bunch of Dallas artists got together and held that show at Trees because he got a lot of his equipment and his work stolen. And I mean, look at Kayla Sinclair, look at Jesse Pride, look at Bobby Sessions, who I guarantee is going to be huge soon, and just the number of artists around this.
Yeah, you can go on. Blue the Misfits, Sarah Jaffe, there's all these names.
And if you look back, like you guys said, like 10 years ago,
Yeah.
there was no support or even further. That's why somebody like DLC, when you see him out, when he came out, that's why he relevant nothing but Los Angeles, because there was not.
Yeah, now he claims Dallas.
Right.
Yeah,
You
he
know,
put on Justice.
I think that there's a perfect, not perfect, but there's a good balance in the scene right now. And I read your commentary that you did about Dallas and with just Gage got left going with that. And I just don't see it that way, man. I think it's stronger. Local support is better than it's ever been.
Yeah, I think we're gonna, it's tough to notice these things when you're in it, but I think, in a couple of years, we're gonna look back at this time and be like, that was a pretty fucking great time. And we're gonna be worried, I think, I'm legitimately worried that this plethora of venues we do have are gonna start to be priced out as Deep Ellum continues its upward economic progression. And, yeah, I'm interested to talk about that. I mean, I just
we're
think,
going to move south of here.
I know some places have, longer leases, but I mean, it's just, it's supply and demand, right? As more businesses want to open up down here, and they do, rents are going to continue to go up, and it'll be interesting to see how the landlords kind of deal with that, how much they want to embrace what's going on versus, we live in a capitalist society, how much they're just trying to make their nuts even bigger, and I think that's a legitimate worry. And then, I'm not trying to fearmonger though. So then the question is, if that happens, where do things go? I think traditionally, if you look at the cycles of Dallas music, you would see that, maybe go bounce over to Lower Greenville. But Lower Greenville just went through kind of a very similar change. And so the question is, I don't know, maybe Oak Cliff, maybe East Dallas, it'll be interesting to see.
I'm thinking the Cedars.
Cedars is definitely possible, but same deal. There's a lot of money down there too. So it's gonna it's gonna be a constant kind of leapfrog thing, as is historically the case in Dallas. When Deep Ellum was down a couple years ago, Lower Greenville was having the greatest music moment it had in a long time, and also so was Denton. Let's not. Dallas is very much has blood on its hands when it comes to the Denton music scene, because bands would Denton bands bands would tour. They'd want to play Denton, because there weren't enough rooms in Dallas. But if you're a touring band, why would you ever want to play Denton now when there's bigger rooms and bigger crowds in Dallas? So, there's a reason why there are fewer venues in Denton now.
What do you want to say, Alan?
Oh, I just want to ask, you brought it up, I mean, what you're bringing up in terms of higher rents not only relates to the risk of venues, but also, Scott's a good example of a guy who works here and lives here and has almost competing interests in that regard, conflicted interests, because none of us want our personal reasons to go up. Of course, if freelance does well, then you can pay more for your rent anyway, I guess. But I guess my question is, how does the local residential population relate to the support of the music scene, and how might that change by that?
Well, I think one thing is just the increase in population. I know that look at things like grocery stores and whatnot. They, chain retail. They need a threshold of a population before they consider a neighborhood, and for a long time, that's why Deep Ellum hasn't had a grocery store. I think as the population increases with these two, monstrous buildings coming in, that threshold is going to be approached, if not breached. So I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that more businesses are coming down here. So I mean, I don't know. The rent's going to go up. You know, I lived down here for 3 years. I was down here for 3 years, and my rent doubled in 3 years. It's gonna, you know, it undulates, but it's gonna continue.
I just have faith that our elected officials will somehow screw this whole economy up, just like they did in 2008. That's the only reason our neighborhood didn't get bulldozed back then, is because the banks failed. That's it. That is the only reason. Nobody wanted to save Deep Ellum. It's because one of the presidents tanked the economy. Gas got really cheap. Oh, I don't know. I was on drugs in the 80s and I just think the neighborhood was just dead in the 80s. I mean, we were fortunate to come in and find cheap rent and things like that for places like, you know, Theater Gallery and things like that. I mean, the neighborhood was just, you know, it was a warehouse district. Or you know,
I do think there are reasons to be encouraged, right? I see this guy in the D2 shirt down there. You know, that was a big win for the neighborhood. But at the same time, they're also spending money on the Cotton Belt too. So, you know, I think it's on us to stay on our elected officials about potential developments. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the proposed demolition of 345, but I'm not the biggest fan of that, because I think that'll just expand downtown this way. And again, it's good for the developers. They say it's going to create $4 billion in real estate. So, but you know, I think it's, you know, the people in this room clearly care about this stuff, or you wouldn't be here. So being here is a great step, but also just, you know, staying well read and putting some pressure on your elected officials to do good by the history of this neighborhood is really important. Question down there.
We live here, so we're up by a rock now that how high everything is here. We took a lot done many years ago. It's not more change. I know I'm not we're going to the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's gentrification, right? I mean, that's one of the big buzzwords of our time. It has its pluses and plenty of minuses.
So, just a question, just because, so what in you guys' opinion can be done to balance that out? Because I know gentrification is like a huge concern. We've seen it happen in cities all over America. We've seen it happen in 5 points in New York and just places constantly. So what can be done to achieve the proper balance where it's not bulldozed, or do we just sit back and say, hey, it's coming and wait for the ball?
I think ultimately, and this might not endear me to some people in this room, but I think ultimately Deep Ellum it's not a residential neighborhood, it's a commercial neighborhood. So I think, you know, spending your money at the right places is vital. You know, and you know, I think, you know, Scott lives in a like not a tradition, not like a multi-place. He lives in a, you know, kind of warehouse-like spot. You know, it'll be interesting to see what happens at those places. You know, I'm not a soothsayer, I don't know, but I think it's, you know, as with anything, you know, where you spend your hard-earned money, I think goes a long ways. And, you know, by doing it and spending it in Deep Ellum as opposed to maybe a corporate venue is a great first step.
Yeah, and I think that, I think that Dallas, the more you watch the music scene, there's always, it's like a pendulum, and it will go more towards a corporate world for a few years, and then it usually swings back to indie, you know, and that's kind of where we're at right now, is we're swinging back, we're still swinging back towards indie, because we took it on the chin for quite a few years when the venue shut down. So, and I think that, you know, a lot of people who, you know, their first musical experiences was going to House of Blues and getting gouged on ticket fees and parking and everything else. And I'm friends with people over there, but they, you know, I mean, most of the people there started at Gypsy Tea Room. Almost everybody in production is from Gypsy Tea Room. I mean, the Bomb Factory's put a denim. I mean, you know, and there's Gas Monkey and AEG's in town. I mean, but there's you know, I mean, as far as at the street level, the first shows people are going to be seeing now are more likely to be at an indie room versus going to a House of Blues or something like that. So, you know, it's just something that, you know, it's you know, it's a good time. I mean, I think that right now the indie music scene in town is doing well.
One thing that I really like about Deep Ellum right now, and it, you know, it comes with its pluses and its minuses again, is I really like kind of overhearing what people walking around the neighborhood are saying. And, you know, you hear a lot of people who it's their first time in Deep Ellum forever, and they're like, this place used to be there, this place used to be there, and that's really cool to hear. It's good that they're, you know, coming in here and infusing the neighborhood with money. I think it's also very easy for the many of us in this room who've like put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this neighborhood in the last 5 or so years to look at those people and feel a little resentful. But I think it's important that we embrace them, that we show them good times, we tell them the cool spots, and if we don't really like them, we tell them the not cool spots. Go check those out, because a lot of the not cool spots are owned by locals too. So
And
fill their coffers.
One thing we can do down here, don't let it out of this room, just give more money to the homeless. As long as we keep the homeless around, the rich people are moving down here. Just remember that. Give those men, give those women a water.
Scott promised to drop knowledge, and he just drops
I'm just telling
knowledge.
you, I look at some of these Deep Ellum community pages down here, and some of the comments make my head want to explode. But homeless have been down here forever, and really, it is an issue at times, but I'd much rather give my money to some of them than some of the people that will open businesses down here, put it that way.
All right, we're about out of time. Before we run out of time, I think we could talk about the gentrification of Deep Ellum, obviously, all night. But I wanted to hear you speak to developmental changes in Dallas, like the Observer nixing the full-time music editor role, and that we have, is it 0 full-time music editors for major publications in Dallas now?
In Dallas. Now, Fort Worth still has, at Star Telegram, a music coordinator.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in Dallas.
Oh, they have a music critic. They have Preston Jones. So what happened was Hunter Hawk was the music critic, not a music editor, at the Morning News, and he quit in like June, and the new editor over there, like head editor, said that they were going to replace Hunter, and then their budgets in October came, and they decided to just kill that position because they hadn't made a hire in that time, and that basically they hadn't seen a traffic decrease and didn't see the value in spending the money. What happened at the Observer was also kind of a consolidation of budgetary concerns, where right now they have, 6 years ago they had 4 people working the back of the book, covering the arts and theater and music and just event listings. Now they're down to just 1 full-time editor who's in charge of arts and culture coverage, and then a part-time listings person. I think it's very important to know that these people who make these decisions are so far removed from plugged into the local music scene. These decisions have absolutely nothing to do with the local music scene. The music scene could be, thriving 10 times greater than it is right now, or it could be total, garbage. It's strictly a business move on their part. I think in some instances, I think it'll hurt their bottom line in some aspects. The majority of the advertisers in the Observer are music venues. So without a full-time music editor there, that does create some issues. They're not going to be stopping music coverage, neither of these places. They're still going to be having plenty of music coverage, be it through their current staff members writing about music or through freelancers pitching stories. Where it becomes potentially dangerous is in the long term, where I just think it's a really dangerous thing for the long-term quality of content, where you've got freelancers pitching stories to someone who doesn't have the talking points or the history or the knowledge about what makes that story important, why that story is important, to be able to tell the writer, here's an angle worth pursuing, and so on and so forth. So I think it's just going to lead to far less informed articles being written, and I think that's the ultimate thing. And I think, frankly, a lot of the people who are freelance writing, especially in music sections, they're making like $30 a story, which is, that's just the going rate, so it is what it is. But when they're making that much, they only have so much of a vested interest to necessarily do the 2-week deep dive into, why this great blues history of Deep Ellum informs Charlie Crockett, So there are issues that, I worry that, I just think the quality is going to go down. You've got one person who's in charge of 9 stories as opposed to 3 stories, so it's just, there's less time. But the overall quality is going to dip. because we don't have, because advertisers only want to pay $400.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's what they're worth. So that's why they get good. It's like,
And that's why they're consolidating the thing. It has nothing to do with the strength of the music scene. I mean, hey, everyone out here is running a business. The papers are running a business. If they, they're not doing this out of the goodness of their heart. They might be to some extent, but if they're going dead broke, they're going to do something else. So what it boils down to is if you appreciate something, you support it. And if you think it's important.
when people talk about shows on like there's more people talking about local music though than there was 5 years ago with social media, and that's all free. When you wake up in the morning and you see all your friends have pictures of the show that you were out the night before, you might go, oh, I don't need to read what some guy wrote his opinion on the show. Because here's what my people that I trust.
Sure. Well, I do think like show reviews have gone way down in importance. They just have. And I can tell you from my own experience, they do not get the page views that they used to. But informed, articles about someone's art and why it's important, I think still does have value. Writing about developments in the scene and why that is important has value. Chris mentioned we were talking about those 2 jobs being gone. I broke those stories, and because I was paying attention. And it is important that those jobs are gone, and it's important that, I think that I've been around to be able to look and see and was paying enough attention to be like, these jobs are gone. None of you noticed that these jobs are gone. Here's why it's important. So, I think this kind of conversation is really important. I think. Another thing is, I think without that kind of history, you can say like, Cure for Paranoia is this great band that's doing this. They're so unique. Nothing's ever been done like this before. But there's been bands who've done similar things like that before. Cure for Paranoia is doing great things, but a lot of what's informed their popularity right now, I would say, is some of what Collab has brought to them and allowing them to hone their chops and get better by being a part of that. And I think. Just one person who sees Cure for Paranoia once thinks they're, fucking great and wants to write about them. That's cool, but I think that you need to know the why, and I think that's what we're gonna lose.
What's different about Central Track that it's never had a music editor?
Well, because we're way smaller scale than anyone else. I was the music editor at the Observer. I'd say probably about 50% of our coverage is music.
That wasn't a hostile question. That was more.
It felt hostile. No, I think I know. Yeah, full disclosure, Helen works for us. So I don't know. I think because we're trying to do a greater look at just the culture at large, and we're very much into music because we think that's what our readers care about. And we're coming at it from the ground up, right? I would have loved to be in a position, and it's a goal of ours to be in a position by the end of the summer where we've made a couple editorial hires, and maybe one of those people will just be focused on music, and we are growing. So that's the good news. Is not all these publications are shrinking, but I know that if I were privy to the numbers, I would be very interested to see how the music numbers at Guide Live, the Dallas Morning News, and the Observer look, just their traffic numbers, their web traffic numbers look, a year from now. I think they'll be closely looking at that too. So again, just like with the demographics, I don't know what the future holds, but I think there's reason for concern, but then there's also reason not to, just straight run for the hills and think that everything's trash, because things are really strong right now with the music scene, as we've said multiple times. But I think we need to be careful about how we proceed.
May I just ask a question?
Yes, please.
Because when you said careful how we proceed, what would be your concerns about how we're proceeding right now?
With journalism?
Well, in general, because it sounded like more towards the music scene itself.
Well, yeah, like I was saying, I think it's important that we spend the money on the local businesses, that we spend the money on, sure, the local publications. Central Track is owned by me. I live in Dallas. The Dallas Observer is owned by a conglomerate based out of Phoenix. So, yeah, read us. Roll with the homies.
Or Ghost of Blind Lemon. Shameless plug.
Okay, sure.
I believe that we have run out of time, even though we have not run out of questions. I know that all of our panelists don't have the luxury to stick around and answer all of our questions, as much as I wish that they did. So, it's 8:04. We end at 8. If there's any super pressing questions somebody didn't get a chance to ask, and now is the time. Otherwise, we're going to wrap up, and maybe they'll stick around for a little bit for you guys to meet and have a moment with. We thank you for being here, and hope to see you again next month, the first Sunday of every month, excluding holidays. We have these get-togethers here for the Deep Ellum community, anyone who has an interest in the Deep Ellum community.
What's the subject next month?
Jim, do we have a topic for next month?
Usually December is the Christmas party.
It's the Christmas
So
party.
religion in Deep Ellum is the topic of next month. Why not a holiday party, Jim? I'll be here with all the
It is
fuego
our
tape.
non-denominational holiday party. The first Sunday.
We got to be careful with how we proceed.
We'll have a nativity scene in one corner and a Christmas tree in another corner. Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, thanks all for coming out.
I'll stick around at the bar for a minute if anyone wants to talk.
I will
Yeah.
too. I can make it until at least the halftime.
Yeah, they have these. What were these Herman shots that were Herman Schillers for $1 in there?
This is William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like, follow, or subscribe to us and get notices of all our videos. We love it, even when you call.